I want to ask anybody here who's had a problem with a health bill to raise your hand. Okay, this one's for you. Whoa. Still thinking. Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so not long ago, members of my family had 4 bits of minor surgery, about a half hour each, nothing really serious. The anesthesia bills alone for the first one were $2,000, the second one, $2,000, the third one, $6,000. So I'm a journalist. I'm like, what's up with that anyway? I did some research, and I figured out that for the expensive one, I was being charged $1,419 for a generic anti-nausea medication that I could buy online for $2.49. I had a long and complicated conversation with the insurance company, the hospital, my employer at the time. Like, is this really what it's supposed to be like? And they all said, absolutely, totally standard, no difference from any other procedure. So I started thinking about this a little bit later when I had volunteered for a buyout from the New York Times, and I was looking for my next act. It turned out that next act was to found a startup building a company telling people what stuff costs in healthcare. I won a Shark Tank type pitch contest to do just that. So health costs ate up 18% of our nation's gross domestic product last year, but nobody has any idea what stuff costs. This is a huge problem. It's actually a national emergency. 67% of Americans are either very worried or somewhat worried about unexpected medical bills, a Kaiser study found. Another study recently found that of 1,000 patients surveyed, 64% they delayed or neglected seeking medical care in the previous year because of concerns about high medical bills. I can give you names and details of people who are not going to the doctor for simple things, a mammogram, a blood test, because they think they can't afford it. Mothers who want to care for their children and can't pay. Sons caring for their mothers who can't afford the medication. So, because of the secrecy in billing and the finagling of money behind the scenes, these price variations are huge. The charge for one simple MRI could be $300 in one place or $6,000 in the same city. A common blood test, $19 or $522 in the same area. So someone gets the $500 bill and they decide that they won't go to the doctor the next time. Doctors order something and people don't do it. The problem gets worse, requiring even more money. Imagine if you could afford the diagnosis but not the cure. People die. You don't have to look too hard these days to find stories about people who are dying because they can't afford insulin. A medication invented in 1923 by a man who refused the patent because he felt it was unethical is now enriching big pharma and killing people. Patients are angry and afraid. Doctors are angry and afraid. A huge amount of human potential is wasted on this problem. We have a giant, slow-rolling public health crisis caused by the money. The relationships between patients and doctors are being shredded by this. In the richest nation on earth, we can't get this right. There's a ton of misinformation, disinformation, deceit, and secrecy about this topic. We can tell you, for example, about scores of people who've asked for pricing in advance had a procedure, and then got a bill that was double the size. People who get pre-approval for a surgery, have the surgery, come out and find out that the approval has been withdrawn, and they're considered necessary to pay. Prescriptions. Many people are surprised to find out that if they put away their insurance card and pay cash, they're paying less than they would as an insured person. For decades now, presidents have staked their presidencies on fixing this problem, and still. There's a ton of regulation, but it seems largely ineffective on controlling prices, either at the national or the state level. That law that seeks to outlaw surprise and emergency billing, that's stalled in Congress, going nowhere, because the people who are making money off of it are lobbying against it. So, what's the solution? Well, yes, it's journalism. So here's what we're doing to solve the problem. We're building a community-created guide to health costs and doing journalism that helps people navigate. You can think of it as something like a mashup of Kayak and the Waze traffic app with great journalism built in. So we built an interactive app that is powered by reported data and crowdsourced data. It helps you navigate. And we do this on our home site and in partnership with other news organizations. So how did we do it? We started out really small. We started calling doctors, hospitals, labs, and clinics, asking them for their cash prices for common procedures. Some people were helpful. A lot of people hung up on us. Many people were just plain rude. They said, "We don't know," or "We can't tell you. Our lawyers won't let us." But despite the stonewallers, we got a lot of really great information. In New York, a simple echocardiogram could be $200 in Brooklyn or $2,150 a few miles away in Manhattan. The same simple blood test in New Orleans, $19 one place, $522 a few blocks away. The San Francisco area, the same MRI, $475 or $6,221, 25 miles away. These pricing disparities persisted over all the procedures in all the cities. Then we started asking people to share their price information. In New York, in partnership with public radio station WNYC, we asked women to tell us the prices of their mammograms. So people laughed at us. They said women are not going to want to come on the air and talk about their breasts. This is a non-starter. In the space of 3 weeks, we had 400 women come and tell us about their pricing information. So gradually, we made it easier for people to share their cost data online. We make the information public in a thing that looks kind of like this, interactive software that we place on our partners' websites. I'm going to try to do a live demo here. As we all know, that technology doesn't always cooperate, but so this is on our site. This is not one of our partner sites. As you can see, on the left-hand side, you contribute prices. On the right-hand side, you can find prices. So let's say you wanted to tell us about your recent MRI. You know what, I'm going to expand this a little bit. You wanted to tell us about your recent MRI. You type in MRI, and you get this autocomplete pull-down menu. So you pick your body part. This is so we can get clean data, right? Tell us who's your provider. This is powered by the Google Places API. Again, we want clean data. We want to make it easy for you to contribute. Tell us the date of your procedure. What did insurance charge? What were you charged? What did insurance pay? What did you pay? How did you feel about it? Oops. Big old comment box. How did you feel about it? Tell us stories. Give us your email if you want to. We won't make that public. Phone number too. We won't make that public. Send us your EOB or your paperwork, which speeds up our reporting immensely. Tell us you're not a robot. Agree to our terms of service, acknowledging that you're making your information public, and boom, you're in our database. Now, if you want to search the data, I'm going to do a quick search here. Let's say you were looking for an ultrasound. Again, you get that autocomplete pull-down menu. In this case, I'm going to do this in New Orleans, where we had one of our partnerships. And when you search, you get results that look something like this. The prices that we collected are in orange. It says Price Check Journalist up at the top. There's this little flag so you know the provenance of the data. That's a cash price. In green, we have providers coming to us and saying, we want to put our prices in your database. So we give them a spreadsheet that they fill out that comports with our data structure. Obviously, they want to compete on price, right? 125, 150. And here's a community member who paid 150. She says, I've had my ultrasounds done at EJ for over 23 years. My insurance changed. I now have $3,000 out of pocket. So I paid cash to have this done at EJ. 166, 200. Do I hear 283? 649. That's a community member, right? Because it's blue. $865.31. She had to pay the whole thing. And she explains to us that she had an initial bill of $778. Then she got another bill for $87. She called to complain, but they sent her bill to collections. So I paid it. What can you do? But don't stop there. There's a $2,926 ultrasound. So what we learned from this is that people actually are really interested in telling their stories. Then we went on to use the data to make these journalism stories about how to navigate, how to understand the system. The woman in the upper left-hand corner went to the doctor with a sore shoulder. She came out with a diagnosis of frozen shoulder and a bill for $160, which seemed fair. I mean, steep, but fair. They followed it up with a bill for $1,434.01 for the facility fee, because the clinic that she went to was part of the Tulane University Medical Center Empire. Now, she didn't know this, but she wound up with this facility, I'm seeing nods, right? This facility fee bill. So we wrote a story about it, Facility Fees 101. Where does this thing come from? Do you have to pay it? What if your insurance company won't pay it? How can you avoid it? Can you ask questions on the front end so you don't get one of these? The woman in the bottom right, she actually has a hereditary condition that probably affects her now, certainly will affect her later. Her doctor said we should have a baseline MRI. So she scheduled it. 2 days before, they called her Tulane University Medical Center and said, how are you going to pay for this thing? And she said, well, how much is it going to cost? They said, how are you going to pay? And she said, I heard you say that. How much is it going to cost? And they said, what's your deductible? And she said, well, $5,000, but what difference does that make? The price is the price, right? They said, we'll call your insurance company, we'll get back to you. So I know. They called her back and said, we have really great news. You've spent down part of your deductible. It's only going to be $4,538. And she said, what? So she happens to work at the Times-Picayune, which is one of our partners at the time. We got to watch this happen in real time. She came over to our reporter and said, is this what these things cost? And he said, well, look in the database and see if you can find it. She came back and said, I must be doing something wrong. I found it for $672.86. And he said, I'm not sure you're doing anything wrong. She was like, what do I do? So he said, check your work, act like a reporter, talk to your doctor. And she had it for the lower price and wrote us a note. We couldn't write about her because she's one of us, but she wrote us a note explaining that she'd gone from pure terror that she wouldn't be able to have the test because she knew she wasn't going to get it at the high price, to having the knowledge that she gained from this. So our work has led to partnerships with news organizations in New York, New Orleans, Philadelphia, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Miami, and elsewhere. We found that thousands of people want to tell us this information. They think of us as their gladiators, that we're out there fighting for them in a way that nobody else is fighting for them. Information is power. If you give people an idea of what stuff costs, they'll do it. They can make the best decisions for themselves and their loved ones. So, why does journalism work here? Well, there is this narrative that journalism is dead, right? Fake news, blah, 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 blah. But the truth is that in this situation, the existing structures can't do anything to address the problem. Legislators aren't going to get to do anything because they are bound by campaign finance. Regulators seem to be ineffective. There's a ton of regulation, but it's ineffective on health pricing. Doctors and hospitals reluctant to give up revenue, insurance companies the same. But we're journalists. We don't have to get laws passed. We can just go out there and tell people stuff. That's what journalism's about, finding stuff out and telling people about it. Now, I want to be really clear. Price transparency isn't going to solve every problem in healthcare. There will still be expensive treatments, overdiagnosis. There will still be a ton of fraud, obviously. And not everything is shoppable. I mean, not everybody wants the cheapest appendectomy or the cheapest cancer care. But with these facts, we're really digging into something that we can actually make a solution. In addition, we also started a conversation involving doctors, hospitals, yes, but also their patients, or as we like to call them, people. In addition to making lives better individually, we've changed policy. In New Orleans, the state insurance commissioner came on the air with us to say that he'd had a consumer protection law waiting in the legislature for 10 years. He said, I've given up on it. It's never going to pass. Those legislators will never go against Blue Cross Blue Shield of Louisiana and Our Lady of the Lake Hospital. We launched, and 9 weeks later, the bill passed by the convincing margin of 100 to 1. In New York, we did a story about a guy who he went to the emergency room. The doctors told him that if he didn't have surgery on his back, he risked paralysis. So he went ahead with the surgery. I mean, he chose surgery over paralysis. He got approval, he thought, but they came back to him after the fact and denied it. $670,000 worth of bills on him. By the time we talked to him, he still owed this amount of money, $220K, he'd taken $49K from his IRA. 2 hours later, the governor's on the phone saying, by the way, I think I can fix his bill. And you know, it seems like the New York State surprise and emergency billing law isn't quite working the way it's supposed to. So we have some regulatory changes that we're going to inject to protect consumers. So journalism not only fixes bills, it also changes policy. I could tell you dozens of stories like this. When we tell these stories like this, legislators and regulators listen. So finally, what can we say about this in the context of this discussion about fake news, failed journalism, and all that? We're saying not so fast. We're building trust in media, changing lives, changing policy, yes, changing the world. Who else can do this groundbreaking work? Nobody. It's us. We do say we're the happiest people in journalism these days because we hear every day from people who are being helped by our work. You're extraordinary. You're awesome. We greatly appreciate you. I could do this all day too. We've started asking the right questions now. We've saved hundreds already. One of the best concepts that you've ever done. Keep up the fight. You're wonderful. Tremendous. By the way, I don't have a slide on this, but I did a TED Talk about this topic that's now closing in on 2 million views. They put it on YouTube, and everybody told me, don't look at the YouTube comments. They are universally positive. And this is a huge issue for so many people. And we hear stuff like this. You're amazing. Don't stop. You're helping people every day. Thank you so much. Come talk after if you want. Thank you. Thank you.